The following is a program of the Santa Barbara County Education Office. To learn more, visit sbceo.org.
I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools. I am so delighted to welcome and introduce my guest today, Chris Slaughter. Chris Slaughter is the Executive Director for the Santa Maria Valley Discovery Museum, a gem here in Santa Maria, past President of the Orkut Childrens Art Foundation, and Trustee for the Santa Barbara Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Susan.
We are in for a treat today. I'm so looking forward to sharing about you with all of our viewers today, and not only what you do now, but what you have done. But let's start from the very beginning. Let's talk about your upbringing, childhood, where you were born, raised, all of that.
Okay, well, it does start there, I suppose.
Yep.
I was born in Bloomington, Illinois, so I'm a Midwestern girl, corn-fed, and it was a wonderful place to grow up. And I had a lot of music around me, a lot of just great old-fashioned Midwestern values. We moved to California when I was 15, so really all my formative years were in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm. So if you came to California at 15, you must have needed to finish high school, I would imagine, and then college. Can you tell us where you went to high school and college?
Yeah, I went to Lynbrook High School in San Jose, and then went off to UCLA, went off to the big city. Wonderful experience, great school, obviously, had a great time, and was an English major. Mm-hmm. So I started as a engineering, actually, with an engineering focus, and decided to have a little bit more fun, and went into English and did a lot of television production.
Television production. So then what was your first job right out of college?
I actually was an intern for 2 years at Entertainment Tonight, and which led to a job actually before I started, which was an incredible opportunity, and what a fantastic place to work, and to learn about production and the entertainment industry.
Can you say a little bit about what just in terms of that first role out of college and your internship and all of that, what some of your responsibilities were at Entertainment Tonight?
Sure. Even as an intern, it's part of their business model, and so you actually are part of getting the show on the air every day. So it was that crazy, get to work at 5 in the morning, get the show on the air, you're really part of things. And not to date myself, but this was before computers. So, even in the research department, it was a matter of, clipping by Variety magazines and finding the information and getting it on the air. So it was a challenging and just fascinating and passionate, great first career.
Sounds like it, and I know that it impacted other jobs that you've had along the way. But before we get to those, let's talk about how you got to Santa Maria. You went from UCLA, somehow got to Santa Maria.
It's a long path.
Trace for us that path.
Okay, well, my path actually led me back to Illinois. My husband is an oral surgeon in the area, Dr. Joe Slaughter, and he did a residency back in Chicago. So I left my perfect job, as he says, ruined my career 10 or so times, but actually created this wonderful path that I never would have imagined. So I ended up back in Chicago, worked for Bloomingdale's actually in community relations, and just as that was going really great, I came back for another residency back in Los Angeles, and worked for a show called Personalities, actually, as an associate producer. So kind of bounced around between a few things.
And so then how did you end up landing in Santa Maria?
When our first daughter was born, and we were living in Encino, we started thinking about how she was going to be raised, and we decided to kind of go back to those Midwestern roots and find a little bit of a smaller community to raise our kids. So found this wonderful practice with offices in Santa Maria and San Ynez and Santa Barbara at the time, and planted our roots. And here we are.
It is a wonderful place
it's
to
a great place
plant
to,
roots
absolutely.
and raise children, truly, all of the places that you mentioned. And one of the places that you really put your roots down was in Orkut, the Orkut Childrens Art Foundation. You were one of the past presidents. Can you talk about your decision to be involved with the organization?
Sure. Well, I have two girls, two young, at the time, very young girls, and I was, getting involved with the PTA and was a president of the PTA of May Grisham at the time, and so at the time the administrators, Ken Parker and some of the other administrators, were putting together this Orkut Children's Arts Foundation, and had identified people already being leaders in the schools, and so my kids actually came home the day. What sparked my interest is they, as a kindergartner and a first grader, came home from school with these really fabulous pieces of art that are still framed in my house today, and they were clearly inspired by a professional. It was more than the teacher getting some crafts in the classroom. It definitely had great influence with a professional, and the kids were really proud of it, and I was proud of it. It's still in the house, and I thought this is something we want to keep going in our schools. And it turns out that program was funded for a final year where they brought professional artists in the classroom with us starting the foundation to replenish the funding, which was really great timing because that funding doesn't even exist anymore. So, so we started the foundation to make sure that kids still had those kind of opportunities with professional artists and really directed programs, and to find funding for that within the Orkut Union School District. So it was wonderful.
Incredible foundation. It's such an enriching experience for students. Clearly, it's still impacting your own house. You have the artwork up there.
It is.
Yeah. Where is there artwork in your house?
Well, that one is actually in my laundry room. But I actually have a house full of art with local artists because I do value that. And it all started really getting involved with the Orca Children's Arts Foundation and getting to know the artists and getting to know the community. And we have a fantastic artistic community here.
Absolutely. And the art, I know, impacts students so deeply. I'm sure as a foundation member and president and somebody who's been very active in this, you've heard a lot of stories about how impactful it can be. Can you share or think about a story that really has impacted a student in significant ways through the arts?
Oh gosh, I can think of so many stories. Not every student is an athlete. Not every student is great academically necessarily, although the arts can grow your academic abilities as well. But some kids, that's their path. That is their path, the arts. And where would we be without that? I mean, art is in everything we do. It's in our phone. It's in the logo on our cups. It's in absolutely everything we do. So finding some importance of that and infusing that in our children is just critical to our community and to our world, really, as I see it.
I absolutely, and I think our viewers would see it this very same way. So turning now to a different organization that you're connected with, it's the Santa Barbara Foundation. You're a trustee for the board there. And to start, let's talk about the foundation, just basics. What does the foundation do for viewers who might not know? Sure,
and they do so many things. It's hard to actually just put a quick definition on that. But really, they build philanthropic capital in Santa Barbara County. It's building the nonprofit sector by getting to know the organizations, by partnering with organizations, providing some grant programs, of course, but also identifying areas of need within the community that need to be grown, like our Family Caregiver Initiative and our LEAF program, which is building food insecurity, building pathways for solving those issues. So we're solving big issues in the community, using other nonprofits as partners, and of course infusing the funding into the nonprofit community through our donors and through good stewardship of our funds. So it's and now with our new North County headquarters, we're able to do even more in the North County because, of course, we serve all of Santa Barbara County. So it's a fantastic place to be part of. The staff is amazing, and they're accomplishing big things, really moving the needle. So
yeah, it really is an impactful organization, and how fortunate for the organization to have you as a board of trustees.
Thank you. I'm learning a lot from them too.
How long have you been on the board?
This is my fourth year.
Okay,
yes.
fourth year.
Boy, it really teaches you so much about that really high level philanthropic, the power of philanthropy, really at that kind of level. It changes lives.
It does change lives, and it, as you said, moves needles. Something else that moves needles, I think, are experiences for students. And let's talk a little bit about the Children's Museum, which truly is a jewel. You're the executive director. It is a wonderful museum. I want to give you an opportunity to share about it, talk about it, paint a picture for people who haven't been there.
Thank you. Well, we're 21 years as the only children's museum in Santa Barbara County, so that alone is a huge thing. And we're 4 years into a revitalization effort that's brought new exhibits and funding and attention to our incredible resource. So we really stand alone in what we do, serving our population. Kids of all ages, but primarily 2 to 10. We're doing a lot of things to grow that age demographic, but we always are going to need that early childhood education to prepare kids and get them ready for the 21st century. So we have daily programs, exhibits, hands-on exhibits where kids get to become problem solvers and critical thinkers, and it's a really wonderful place, and I'm proud to be part of it.
It is a wonderful place. It truly is a community gem. And there's something that you just launched. I use that word on purpose because of the Vandenberg launch. So tell us a little bit about the exhibit itself and the partnership with Vandenberg.
Oh gosh, it's such an incredible thing. So we're 2 years into a partnership with Vandenberg Air Force Base and our STEM or STEAM, because of course we always like to add the arts into the science, technology, engineering, and math. So 2 years into an effort to bring STEM education through an exhibit and programming to the museum, it resulted in an educational partnership agreement with Vandenberg Air Force Base. It's the first one they've ever had and the first one we've ever had, which is a mutual commitment to bring STEM education and the resources at the base to our community. And part of that is this new exhibit. So we started with our shuttle. It's for the little ones, but it's just fantastic. And TDEC, the model shop, I use model shop very loosely because these guys could build anything, rockets and incredible. They have every tool imaginable. So they put together this wonderful shuttle for kids where they can imagine, flying off to Mars or somewhere in space. And the next phase that we are now in the process of developing is a launch experience with 3 consoles where kids can work independently or as a team with a facilitator to launch a spacecraft and to learn about satellites and all kinds of aerospace, and get them excited about the technology and our space science.
Incredible partnership with Vandenberg to promote STEAM, STEM, hands-on, project-based learning, all of that collaboration. It sounds like it's a really powerful partnership, and there are other partnerships too. I know Hancock has been a big partner. My understanding is through the makerspace weekend.
Right.
Can you share with us about that weekend? It's
another really incredible thing going on at the Discovery Museum. So we are part of a makerspace movement. Really is an international movement, and it's a little bit in response to the lack of hands-on vocational kind of training kids are used to get in high school, and now the community colleges want to be that kind of a resource. And then for us to be part of the gateway to that by getting kids exposed with tinkering and maker activities and STEM, and there's countless things that kids can do, from building catapults to robots to learning about math and making it fun. So we were already in the process of creating a makerspace in the Discovery Museum, and Ellen Hancock College was in process of doing a makerspace on the next level where they're welding and things like that. And the Santa Maria Public Library was also creating a makerspace with other kind of activities. And so the 3 of us came together for a makerspace weekend, and which was part of their Friday night science. Then Saturday was activities at the museum and at the library. And the next phase of that, hopefully, we've all partnered together for a grant that would bring more staff and funding for materials and creating a makerspace within all 3 environments. So we're really hopeful that grant will come through, and whether it does or not, we're working on a makerspace in the museum and taking our art from scrap and turning it into art and science from scrap, where kids are creating all the time and becoming these critical thinkers. So We love it.
So powerful. Not only the partnerships are powerful, but I mean, just your enthusiasm, your deep love for what you're doing totally comes through. It's really remarkable.
Watching the kids do this you really need to come and experience it.
I can't wait.
It drives our passion.
Yeah, I can't wait. And you talked a little bit just now about grants. And so clearly with the museum, there needs to be partnerships like the ones that you've talked about, but there's also some fundraising that comes along with it. How does the museum address the needs that it has in terms of sustainability?
Well, funding is the hardest part. And we get no operational funding from the city, state, federal government. It all has to come from admissions and grants and fundraising. And our funding gap between what we bring in through admissions and membership and such, and what it costs to run the museum at a very frugal level, because we really run a very frugal ship, is still $10,000 to $15,000 a month, even with all the work that we've done. So filling that gap is challenging, and it has to come through grants and fundraising. Now, filling that gap permanently, that's the goal, and we're working on it. We've done a lot of progress toward it, but there's still a lot of work to do.
So there's admissions, obviously, that people can contribute to come into the museum. But I understand that and I think you said a little bit about field trips and students and children coming to the museum, school groups.
Right.
Do school groups come throughout the year?
Yes, and we're just in the, I would just say that we have just been in the heat of field trips, but they're still coming. So there's summer programs that are now coming in through field trips. We've had up to 2 to 3 field trips a day through May and June. It's been at 100 kids at a time sometimes. So that's why I work in the back. But before I slip to the back, watching those kids come through the door, and sometimes that's their first or only experience with the museum, particularly with all the new things that we've done. There's some wonderful exhibits right when they come through the door. The look on their face is what drives us all. It's really this, we actually hear the word wow, when they come through, and that's really satisfying. We have to remember that for a lot of kids in our community, we are their Disneyland. I mean, we are, they may never get down to the real Disneyland. And so we need to be the best possible facility we can be for those folks. And in addition to entertaining them, like Disneyland, we actually get to educate them as well. So being able to do both and seeing their eyes light up when they come through the door is really, it gets us through the day, and it gets us through the month. And it's a wonderful opportunity. I feel fortunate to be part of it.
So hearing that wow from the students as they walk in the door is very, very special. I know there's so many special aspects to your job. Tell us some more. Tell us what else is such a great part, or many great parts of your role.
I feel so lucky to be there because I get to really experience kids interacting with their parents or the adults that are with them, because it's not always the parents, of course. And we have a lot of kids with disabilities that come in, and we are told by parents sometimes it's that first spark that they've actually really experienced with their child, that it really moved them forward in their communication, and so they come all the time, and that feels really good. We had a field trip of almost entirely deaf children, and they were having the best time because they could figure out everything by themselves, and they didn't need to either read the signs or be told what to do. They just knew what to do, which is great affirmation that we're doing the right thing on the floor. But we were told by the teacher that really it was a wonderful experience for the kids that don't always get to have that happening. So from kids that are struggling in one way or the other, or our Kite Festival, which is such an incredible event with 2,000 people that come to Rotary Centennial Park, watching families have quality time together outside, really doing things together, that's a powerful thing to watch. It's very emotional, actually, to see that happening.
So the Discovery Museum is a place where the students themselves or children themselves can get into what they're getting into, but there's also a connector with other members of their families.
Or agencies. We have a lot of agency members that need to bring children, or sometimes adults that need some guidance in how to work with the kids as well. We're a wonderful convening place for that to happen. And it's a safe place, it's a fun place, and so we have more and more agencies that are taking advantage of that opportunity. opportunity too.
Just a moment ago, you talked about the Kite Festival. Tell us a little bit more about that Kite Festival if viewers haven't participated.
It is so wonderful. It started before my time there, but I think it was our 8th year this year. It's right now it's at Rotary Centennial Park. We have 2,000 people or more that come. It's hard to get those numbers. And vendors too, food and also agencies that come and share their resources. But when you look up in the sky and you see hundreds of kites flying and families having fun together outside, the wind's blowing, and it's really, it's like I said, it's really an emotional experience for our staff. It's a great opportunity to watch families make those really important connections together.
And does it happen just one time?
One time a year, yeah. So it's in April, which is during Kite Month, and there's a National Kite Month. But it's a fantastic event, and we'll keep doing that.
That's fantastic. Well, Chris, let's shift a little bit to leadership. You're such a leader in so many ways in all of the different foundations and organizations and the museum, clearly, and have been for so long. I'd like to talk with you about your thoughts on leadership. What does leadership mean to you?
That's a great question. And I talk about this with my staff, too. So leadership to me is working harder than anyone in the room, really understanding the people around you and supporting them. And I'm not a good delegator. That's probably my downfall as a leader. But seeking opportunities, taking risks, not being afraid to take risks is really one of the biggest things because this work is hard sometimes. And it's easy to say, oh, we don't want to get ourselves in trouble, or it's sometimes hard to really take the difficult path that needs to be taken to lead through the development of a new foundation or the development of a revitalized museum or whatever that means. But it's so satisfying. So.
Takes a lot of courage, as you said, to be that leader and go into areas that you haven't been before.
Right.
Yeah. And so let's talk then about, still about leadership, but mentorship. I would imagine that you've had mentors along the way as you've changed roles. Can you talk about either who they might be or at least what they have shared with you?
Gosh, I think I've learned almost everything I know from mentors. So I try to be that mentor, for the next generation of leaders. Gosh, so many along the way. From my early days in production to more recent time, we have wonderful board members that have been mentors in all the different. My biggest challenge was learning the financial management of the museum. So Kim Davis, who is the executive director of CASA, and Diane Adam, who is just a hero of mine, who took over as the board president, really listening to these wonderful women and men that are around you that have these wonderful skills, education, experiences. It's all important. And it all comes together with this fabulous package to create something you can't do by yourself.
So, Chris, you've clearly been successful. Everything you've done seems like it turns into corn gold.
I don't know about that, but we've had some fun along the way.
So define success. How do you define success?
I guess for the museum, I define success for closing the gap, closing that funding gap. For my kids, making sure that they're finding their own path and leading happy lives. It means a lot of different things, but for the museum, it means closing the funding gap, and that's been a challenge, but we're doing it. So,
for up-and-coming nonprofit leaders, and maybe those who are working with nonprofit organizations, even philanthropy, what might you share with the nonprofit leaders or even those who are giving to nonprofits?
Well, I think first is identifying the resources that are in your community and then supporting those resources to the best of your ability. Rather, that's being with another nonprofit that can be a partner. Rather, it's being a donor that can give financially or of their time as a volunteer. It's all important. But I often meet people that say, I didn't know there was a children's museum in Santa Maria. I'm like, oh my gosh, what do we have to do to get this thing out there? It's like, as a parent, as a community member, I think it's your responsibility to figure out what's in your community and what's needed. And it's not hard to find. It's we're out there.
Well, when we started the show today, we talked about this being a real treat, and it really is a treat to learn from you and hear from you. And, something I want to ask before we close is you've had a lot of different sorts of roles throughout your life, and one impacts another often. Mm-hmm. And what would you say is a thread or something that you have learned and taken with you from one role to the other, even if they're not exactly related?
Yeah, I've definitely had an eclectic path, but I think kids have sort of helped to lead my path, whether it's my own children that got me to Santa Maria, to kids in schools and wanting them to have the best possible experience. So finding the resource, the PTA or the Orkut Childrens Art Foundation, and getting involved and not just sitting back and waiting for others to do the hard work. I think taking responsibility and letting the kids help guide the path one way or the other is, they're our future, and we need to support them in every way we possibly can.
Well, as we wind down, this very last question for you then would be to our viewers in the community. What message would you like to share with the community here in Santa Maria?
Encourage kids to find their own path. Encourage and a path less traveled. I have my path is not the one traveled by many, and I've been able to do lots of great things because I just trusted it and trusted the people around me that helped kind of get me there. So trust your kids that they'll find that path. Trust yourselves to find passion for yourself in the community, and support your community in every way that you can.
You said the word passion. I think that word describes you so well. Thank you so much for being my guest today and sharing your life's work really with the community. We're really fortunate to have you as a leader here in our community and the Discovery Museum and all of the different organizations you're connected with. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools. Thank you so much for joining us today for this edition of Local Leaders.